Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We'll chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gently open your eyes. We'll chant from verses 16 to 20 of chapter 3. Evam pravartitam chakram
Evam pravartitam chakram
nanuvartayati hayah
nanuvartayati hayah
aghayurindriya ramah
aghayurindriya ramah
mogham partha sajivati
mogham partha sajivati
yastvat maratireva syad
yastvat maratireva syad
atmatriptascha manavah
atmatriptascha manavah
atmanyeva cha santushtah
atmanyeva cha santushtah
tasya karyam na vidyate
tasya karyam na vidyate
naiva tasya krite narthah
naiva tasya krite narthah
na krite neha kaschana
na krite neha kaschana
na chasya sarva bhuteshu
na chasya sarva bhuteshu
kaschidarthavyapashrayah
kaschidarthavyapashrayah
tasmadasaktah satatam
tasmadasaktah satatam
karyam karma samachara
कार्यं कर्म समाचर
असक्तो ह्याचरन् कर्म
असक्तो ह्याचरन् कर्म
परमाप्नोति पूरुषः
परमाप्नोति पूरुषः
कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम्
कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम्
आस्थिता जनकादयः
आस्थिता जनकादयः
लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि
लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि
सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि
सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So last week I had given you two homeworks. The second one is about how to practice this in your life, the sadhana tips which were given. But the first one, wherein I had asked you to take some time out and just repeat these words mentally. Atma Ratihi, Atma Triptaha, and Atmanyeva Santushtaha. And I had asked you to go through this mental exercise of visualizing yourself in that state. Now, what you would have observed is that even though these things look as if now everything is clear, when you actually try to visualize yourself there, you would have found it not so easy. The reason is, all these words are not fixed principles. Fixed principles in the sense they don't exactly explain what that supreme state is. They only kind of indicate. The principle, the higher principle is fixed, but the words used can never ever completely describe that supreme state. Because that state is infinite. And infinite can never be captured by the finite words. It's not only the words. Your own emotions are finite. Your own thoughts are finite. They have a beginning and they have an end. So words, emotions, thoughts, none of these can actually capture that infinite God principle. Or even the description of that state. If that is the case, then why should you do the sadhana? Why should you visualize? Why should you try to stretch your mind? Anyway, it's not possible. The mind is finite. And here We're talking about that infinite state. So why go through that exercise at all? Now, this is where a very important principle of sadhana comes into the picture. That is, each one of you, you will be at a particular level. See, nobody will be at 0, nobody will be at 100. You will be at a particular level in terms of spiritual growth. It may be 10%, it may be 20%, it may be 30%, 40%, whatever it is. Now, when these things are given out to you, you will naturally be able to understand and absorb, understand, feel and absorb according to your level. All these principles are applicable at the absolute level and at the relative level also. So, when it is said, Atmaratihi, delights in the self, a person is only 10% developed spiritually. That person will be able to naturally understand, feel and absorb to the 10% level. Similarly, Atmatruptaha, satisfied in the self. Again, he'll be able to understand, feel and absorb. We are seeing all the three aspects up to 10% level. I am just giving 10% as an example, whatever be your level is. Similarly, Atmani eva santushtaha, extremely content only in the self. So, up to that 10% level, he or she will be able to understand, feel and absorb. This is very easy to understand, but there is a small problem here. If you are able to understand, feel and absorb only according to your level, then how can you ever grow? How to move to the next level? Anything which is told, you will understand it according to your level. And then you will continue to remain at that level. How are you going to grow to the next level? This is what our yogis, they did a lot of research on. One is to function at your level, which is very important. But if you merely do that, if you merely do that and stop with that, you are never going to improve, you are never going to move up further. So, how do you effect a growth, inner growth? When the great masters did their meditative research, see, when I say when I talk about the yogic research, it is not external research. It's not using your internet search engines and searching. That is a different kind of research. That is external. Or just merely reading books and getting some intellectual answers. When these great masters did research, they did it through their meditative practice. So they had the ability to go deep within and seek the right answers. So when they did their inner research on this, what they discovered was that in order to facilitate growth, what is required is a challenge. That is, something which you should try which is beyond your comfortable level, which is what we are calling as a challenge. So you're standing at your level, but you have the ability to look up. Even though you wouldn't have moved up, but at least you can look up. You can try to jump a little bit. Now, that is the principle which they have been using when they ask you to visualize. Because your question will be, sir, I am not that today, as of today, then why should I visualize? But the point is, if you get to that state also, you don't need to visualize because you have already become that, no? So, it is that visualization, not merely like a story, but visualization with emotion, understanding emotion and absorption, that helps you to take up the challenge. Even though you are at 10% level, you visualize up to, let us say, 15%. Everyone will be able to look up a little bit. Now that they are asking you to practice. So when the great Mahavakyas were given, Tattvam Asi, that thou art. Prajnanam Brahma means, the consciousness is Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. This individual self is Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that supreme infinite reality. When all these Mahavakyas were given, now they asked the seekers, the sadhaks, to practice the repetition. I am the self, I am the self, I am the self. Now, how would you be able to practice it? Supposing a person is at 10% level, that person will be able to practice it only up to 10%. Beyond that, to understand or feel or absorb is not possible. But when you bring in this principle of challenging the mind, it is possible to a small extent. You can stand on a surface, but you can look up, you can jump up a little bit. So they are asking you to use your faculties to jump beyond your level a little bit. It has to be done only to your capacity. If you overdo it, then you will fall. Many people, they try to force the higher sadhanas without any reference to what their levels are, and that is very dangerous. So this practice of challenging your mind has to be done carefully according to your capacity. So you are very comfortable at your level, and then you can look up and jump up a little bit. To that extent, you will start growing. This is a very logical and scientific way of progressing. You can apply this principle in any field of life. So you take your work skills. You know certain things. Now, are you going to just remain at that level itself, even in terms of knowledge? What you know is already known to you. What you don't know is not known to you. So how do you get to that? You will have to move from that known to the unknown. How? By challenging the mind. So when you challenge the mind a little bit, and when you move up, when you put that small effort, what happens is after a while, you begin to understand, feel, and absorb that which is a little beyond your level. It means your growth process has started. When a master gives healing, when especially the empowerment courses, when the master gives empowerment, which is the transmission of energy, what happens is he accelerates this growth process. By yourself, if you were to sit and do the empowerment sadhana, by yourself means I'm saying without any external help, it will not be possible because it's way beyond your level. It's coming from the infinite dimension. But when you do it under the guidance of the master, now what he does is he facilitates this growth process. He actually gives you the energy from the highest level and then pushes you to stretch your faculties a little more than what it is absolutely comfortable with. So unless and until you come out of your comfort zone, there cannot be any growth. This is something which you should remember. So when this homework was given to you, all these things were not explained because see, certain things cannot be explained fully. When you get into the practice, you will begin to get a hang of what it is, and then when it is explained, it is easy for you to grasp. So every little practice which a master gives will always have a powerful principle behind it. You may understand it, you may not understand it. At that point of time, it is immaterial. It is actually irrelevant. If you just, with that surrender, if you get into the practice, you will begin to understand why these great yogis are asking you to do these various practices. A simple thing like doing the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana every day. If you're just sitting there and asking for the logic, how exactly this will happen, how exactly that will happen, beyond a point it cannot be explained. You just use the material and close your eyes and start getting into the flow. First day, if you're not able to get into the flow, it's okay. Consistently put in effort. Over a period of time, everything will become very simple, very easy. And when it becomes very easy and simple, that is when the master will increase the challenge. It's becoming simple means you've moved up from your level to the next level. Now, are you to rest content? No, because your goal is not all this. It is not these finite achievements even in the spiritual path. Oh, sir, I am able to concentrate better. Excellent, but that is not our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal is the infinite, merging with the infinite. Along the path, you may awaken a lot of powers, you may get a lot of powers, the mind powers. You just have to be a witness because all these things are still a part of the finite only. Sir, I have now developed a lot of clarity. I am able to read others very easily. Whatever it is that I do, my productivity level is increased. Whatever goals I fix, I am able to materialize them. The master would say, excellent, but grow further. In one of the Upanishads, the master gives a very high level empowerment and the student gets a very powerful experience, which is almost close to self-realization. And the student starts reveling in that experience. At that time, the master warns the student. It is whatever you are experiencing now is not the ultimate truth. So even at that level, the same principle is applicable. So on a daily basis, if you don't challenge yourself with something beyond what you're comfortable with, you can never grow. Let it be your physical body, or let it be your emotions, let it be your work, it is your skills, let it be your knowledge, and more so the spiritual practices. Day by day, you need to keep on improving, and that improvement can come only when you test yourself with a little bit of challenge, when you challenge yourself. And what is interesting is every day when you're challenging yourself beyond your limits, now that will also make life so interesting. You'll never get bored in life. Otherwise, if you settle down at a particular level and you're just mechanically doing whatever it is that you're doing, after a while, so much of boredom will set in. So, Atma Ratihi, Atma Triptaha, Atmanyeva Santushtaha. These three principles are meant to give you the challenge, to challenge you beyond whatever level you are in today. And once you say, let's say from 10% you move to 15%. Oh, is that fine? Now, Atmaratihi will mean something else to you. So you will be able to stretch it more. So when you keep on stretching yourself, when you keep on challenging yourself and growing, you will find it amazing. It's not only these three principles, all the sadhana principles which are given can be stretched right up to self-realization. So you can start from where you are, which is known to you, and keep on moving up, which is unknown to you today. So this is the path from the known to the unknown. Now, we have gone into a lot of detail of what is Atma Ratihi, Tripta, I have told you Ratihi, and then Tripti Shakti, and then Tushtihi, all that we saw. If you just take an overview, a very simple way of looking at it, that also I'll just give you, because sometimes a very simple way will help you to remember and practice something more easily. A very simple way of looking at this is that Atma Ratihi refers to the person's state with respect to the physical body and the external environment. Atma Triptaha refers to that inner state with respect to the emotions. And Atmani Santushtaha, the Santushtaha refers to the inner state with respect to the intellectual level. So whenever you're acting, what is your inner state? That is, whenever you're using your physical body for something, what is your inner state? Delighting in the self. When you are going through the various emotions, what is your inner state? When I say I'm talking of that person's state who has reached the highest, he is completely satisfied. Atmatruptaha. And then at the intellectual level, when with reference to intellectual delights, what is the state? Atmanyeva santushtaha. So whether it is physical enjoyments or whether it is emotional enjoyments or whether it is intellectual enjoyments, none of these can match that inner state of bliss, delight, satisfaction, contentment which the person is feeling, because that inner state is linked to that infinite source. If you take a physical enjoyment, it's linked to something outside. If you take the emotional enjoyment, again it is finite. If you take an intellectual enjoyment, again it is finite. So all these are linked to the finite, whereas the bliss which he is talking about is connected to the infinite source. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're in physical action or you're feeling or thinking, let it be whatever it is. The central theme is be in that inner state of bliss. I gave you the three things, no? Happiness, independence, and freedom. So this serves as a yardstick. As you keep doing your sadhana, you will experience it. You will experience it according to your level. See, the same things like happiness, independence, freedom, as your level increases, they will mean much more. At one go, you cannot grasp the whole thing. And then we were seeing, for that person, there is nothing which ought to be done. He uses the word karyam. Tasya karyam na vidyate. So, karyam primarily means that which ought to be done, duty. So, this person who has merged with the infinite has gone beyond the karmic cycle, the karma chakra. He has broken the shackles of karma. Therefore, he really has nothing to be done. Now, your only question is, does it mean he'll stop action? When we go to the next verse, he'll be explaining that. Because it's a gradual build-up. He's introducing this principle here in the second portion of verse 17. And then in verse 18, he'll go in depth into this. And then in verse 19, he'll give you the practice. What should you do? He'll say, get on with action. Do whatever you ought to do, he'll say. It's a very beautiful flow, which he is building. So as and when that particular aspect is being explained, simply absorb that and reflect on that. Now, don't try to go 10 steps later and say, no, is it that, is it this and all that. By the time we complete this sequence, everything will become clear. So, karyam means that which ought to be done, duty. Number two, karyam means work. Any action the person does, it is a choice only. So today, as long as you have your vasanas, or what we call as a seed of action, you are pressurized to act. That's why in one of the earlier verses he said, nobody can escape action. If you stop activity, you will putrefy, he said. But here what he's talking about is the internal pressure. Everyone has that internal pressure to work, whereas this person doesn't have that pressure. He is resting in that supreme state of infinite bliss. So the moment you don't have a pressure, it becomes a choice for you. And everything in life should be done out of choice, not out of pressure. Whenever you take up something willingly, out of choice, now you will start enjoying it. See, even to a child, if you force the child to study, let us say, the child wants to play. But if you force the child to study, the child will not enjoy it. You will have to make the study also as enjoyable as play. You'll have to study you have to see what the psychology of the child is, and accordingly build a very nice set of activities where the child enjoys. Then you don't need to tell the child. Even sadhana has to be enjoyable. When will it become enjoyable? If you take it willingly, if you take up to it willingly, out of choice. If you are forced to do sadhana, you will stop it at some point of time. So in spirituality, there is no point in using force. It is only when a person is in extreme tamas, the master may use some force to get that person out of that state of inactivity or laziness. But the moment the person overcomes that tamas, then the master will no longer force. See, why all these Sunday sessions? It is to give you that wisdom so that your own mind gets convinced and your mind gets inspired, and it will, want to grow further. And then willingly, consciously, out of choice, you will take up sadhana. The moment it comes as a choice, it will last. There will be no force of resistance. The moment it is a must, that is, there is a force, then there will be that resistance. So what he's saying, when he says for him there is nothing, for that person there is nothing which ought to be done, means there is no resistance to act. If it is required, he will act. Whatever ought to be done will be done, but he will not have the pressure, internal pressure to do it. So that is what we saw. And then karyam also means occupation. Whatever it is that you're doing to earn your bread and butter, now that is causing a lot of stress for you, because your whole happiness, your whole mind, your whole personality is dependent on that only. But this person is dependent on the infinite self. So the occupation also is taken up out of choice. See, you cannot fake this. It's only when you have that bliss within you will be able to do this. So to the extent you have absorbed this wisdom, to that extent you will be able to practice this. Let me make it very clear, because otherwise artificially if you try to force these things, it will not work. And then karyam also means religious rites, the various rituals. What is a ritual? First you need to understand it. A ritual is a set of physical practices given to remind yourself of your goal. So whether you light a lamp, or whether you take a flower and offer it to the idol of God, whatever it is that you're doing, that has to be meaningful. If you do it mechanically, there is no use. So every ritual actually is meant to remind you of that infinite in some way. You break a coconut, that is the breaking of the ego. And when you break the coconut, the white portion of the coconut is exposed. So what is there within you? When you break your ego, the purity will be exposed from within. It's a symbolic thing. If a ritual is not reminding you of the infinite in any way and you are continuing to do it, then it is no longer a sadhana, it is just a mechanical ritual. So you light a lamp, your incense sticks and all that you keep. Now that should remind you of the infinite. You go to a place of worship, go to a temple, that should get you connected with the infinite. Now here this person is already merged with the infinite. Then is there a necessity for him or her to do any ritual? No. When the person has already merged with the infinite, there is nothing to be reminded about. It is only when you forget or move away from that state that you require a reminder. So, this person actually goes beyond all rituals. That's what I was telling you. This is spirituality beyond all religions. It is the science, the inner science of that infinite supreme reality. You can call it by any name, does not matter. But the principle is this only. So as you start evolving spiritually, your orthodoxy will start reducing. You will become more liberal. See, no doubt a set of rules are required in the initial stages, but then that is only for a particular purpose. If you're going to get stuck with those forever, then you will become very rigid with those practices. Then you will start judging others. Anybody who does not do that, you will start looking down upon them. You will judge those. You will start talking negatively about others. It's a very dangerous thing. Many people who get into ritual, these religious rites and all that, after a while, if you observe, they become very rigid with that. That is where these higher principles are so important. Without this jnanam, the knowledge, merely doing rituals will only make a person very rigid. Whereas with this knowledge, you understand the purpose of those rituals, so you can use those rituals to your advantage and grow. And the real effect of growth is that you become very liberal, non-judgmental. Because ultimately God is there everywhere, not merely in the puja room or in the temple alone. It is because you are not able to experience God everywhere that these things have been given. So what is there to be rigid about it? You should, if at all you're doing it, do it with that happiness, that pleasure. If another person is not doing it, no issue. Let him or her find his way, no? So that is one dimension which we saw. And then karyam, the one more dimension I'll give you. Karyam means motive, purpose. So when a yogi acts, actually there is no motive. This is total selflessness. There is actually no purpose. What is the motive behind your activities? It is happiness. What is your purpose? Happiness. Now a yogi has already reached that state of infinite happiness. Therefore, his actions will not have any motive or purpose. Rather, the actions will become expressions of that supreme state of happiness. So, constantly you are acting in order to get happiness. Here is a person who is already happy, and actions come out from that state of happiness. So, he is in a position to transfer that happiness to others. Just like a small child, a child is full of cheer and enthusiasm, constantly active. If you go and ask a child, what is your goal? What is your motive? What is your purpose? The child will not be able to say anything. Whatever the child does, the activities, those activities are nothing but expressions of that inner cheer. So a self-realized master's activities, they become expressions of his inner state of happiness, independence and freedom. And when he is constantly expressing his happiness, which is an automatic process, the happiness, independence and freedom, that energy starts spreading around. So everyone who comes in contact with the master also starts absorbing that energy. That is why when you go to the master, he may not say anything, but your mind will become so peaceful. For no reason, you will also start becoming happy, because he is constantly radiating that energy. Whether he talks, whether he keeps quiet, whether he walks, or whether he eats, or whether he just has a normal conversation, all these things do not matter. They are all only expressions of that inner state of happiness, independence and freedom. It's a very powerful state. So when we say no purpose, at a lower level, having no purpose is tamas. See, two extremes will always look alike, A lazy person and a spiritual person will look alike. So you have to be careful. Initially, you need to fix goals and you need to function. But here he is talking about that highest state where he has reached the ultimate. Since he has reached the ultimate, there is no real purpose thereafter, because he has already achieved that purpose. So the same activity which is a pressure for you now becomes a choice for this person. So as you start growing spiritually, you will start exhibiting all these qualities. Each and every action of yours will start being backed by that inner happiness. Today, everything which you do is backed by stress, mental stress. So that energy pattern will start changing from within. Now, I'll give you one more tip here, and then we will move on to the next verse, in which he is going to continue with this line of thought. So we are going to really go into further depth, because you need to fully grasp this, or rather we can say, to the extent you grasp this, to that extent you will be able to practice the sadhana of karma yoga very effectively. See, we are talking about yajna, that has been the theme, right? And if you remember in the previous verses, it was explained to you how yajna has two aspects, giving and taking. Every transaction of life has these two aspects. You're giving something and you're taking something. You just can't only give or you can't only take. It's not possible. So then you may ask me, sir, where is the question of seva, service? Service is in your attitude. When your emphasis is on giving, we say it is seva. When your emphasis is on taking, then that becomes selfishness. So that is the difference between selfishness and unselfishness. It's not that an unselfish person will not take. If you don't take at all, you cannot maintain yourself. So don't shy away from taking. But let not your primary purpose be that. When you take in order to give, it is unselfishness. When you give in order to take, which means that becomes your motive, then that is called selfishness. So if you analyze your actions, most of your actions will be centered around taking only. So in spirituality, we shift that center from there to giving, which means earlier the sadhak took the position of a taker. That ego of taking was there. Now from there slowly the sadhak shifts his or her consciousness to giving, which means he starts taking the position of a giver. So the ego gets more refined. Instead of the ego of taking, now there is an ego of giving. I want you to focus and understand this properly. Initially the ego was with respect to taking, then it gets refined, and now it becomes the ego of giving. That is a higher state than the ego of taking. From selfishness, the person has moved to unselfishness, but still the ego is there. So whether your emphasis is on taking or whether your emphasis is on giving, you are still a part of that chakra, that cycle of give and take, what he calls as parasparam. But there is the third state, which is the selfless state, which is going beyond giving and taking. It is not that he stops the act of giving or taking, it's not that. But his consciousness soars high up to the infinite, merges with the infinite, and he loses all the ego. So a yogi, neither has the ego of taking, nor does he have the ego of giving. So he is no longer bound by that cycle of give and take. Therefore, there are no obligations for him. See, it is only when you take there is an obligation to give. It is only when you give there is an obligation for you to take. Because you have to maintain, no? Now, where is the issue? It is not about giving or taking. It is about your identification. You either take the position of a taker or a giver. That ego manifests in these two ways: selfishness or unselfishness. So, after moving from selfishness to unselfishness, the third level is moving to the state of selflessness, which means the lower self is completely absent. Who am I to give or take? It is all the expression of that infinite. The taker is also God, the giver is also God. It's the same infinite divine principle. So when these great masters got into that state, they continued to do whatever they were doing, but they go beyond obligations. It is your ego which binds you. And what is sannyasa? Renunciation. It is not wearing a particular dress or giving up things externally and all that. It is giving up that ego which is sannyas. Later on, Krishna himself will be explaining that in the 5th chapter. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha. One who does the karyam karma, that which ought to be done, but anashrita karma phalam, he has renounced the fruits from the mind, he has renounced all the ego, everything. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. That person is a sannyasi, that person is a yogi. He is not saying one who has renounced action, no. One who has renounced the factors which are binding you to action. That is total happiness, total independence, total freedom. So, if you just look at this line superficially, it will look like a very negative state, like one sadhak had mentioned, no? When she first read the translation on her own, she thought this verse was talking about a tamasic person. For that person, there is nothing which ought to be done. So he is always delighting, he is finding happiness within, which means he is so selfish, focuses too much on himself or herself, and then he doesn't do anything. That is how she thought this verse would be interpreted. But no, that is not the meaning. It is just the opposite. I told you two opposites always look alike. So, turning your mind inward and taking it deep within you, this is a sadhana, till you merge with that infinite supreme reality, and thereafter your ego completely dissolves. You go beyond all karyam, obligations, beyond all duties, beyond all actions. Everything which a yogi does is egoless. Today, everything which you do, you can classify them into two categories. Either you're taking or you're giving. It is backed by the ego. So, see, they kept a ritual, offering some flowers to the to God. Now some people ask this question, who created that flower? God only. So you're taking the flower from God's creation and then offering it to God. What is the meaning of that? As I told you, ritual is only to remind yourself. So it is not about, you're actually not giving God. So remember this. Even when food is kept before God, in the puja room, and then when it is taken out to be eaten, it is not that you're giving something to God in the sense that God is lacking something and you're only going and giving him flowers, and it's not like that. It is for you to bring that attitude of complete surrender, egolessness, that this ritual was kept. Now, when you're doing your sadhana and when you're actually becoming egoless, that is the real meaning, not in mechanically practicing these rituals alone. So, if at all you're doing something like that, it should be done with that bhavana. Every time you do that, you just surrender everything to that infinite supreme reality. For a split second, you get a glimpse of that egolessness. Then that ritual has some meaning. So, for that person, there is nothing which ought to be done because he has moved to the state of selflessness, the state where there is no ego whatsoever. Okay, so now we will move on to the next verse number 18. नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थः
नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थः
नाकृतेनेह कश्चन
नाकृतेनेह कश्चन
न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु
न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु
कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः
कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः
नैव तस्य. Naiva means na eva. Tasya means his. Kritenartha. Kritena artha. For him, that is, we are talking about that person whom he was referring to, that great yogi. When we say for him, for her, it is applicable to everyone universally. See, since he is talking to Arjuna, who is a male, he is using the language in a male-oriented way because that will appeal to his mind. But we have to take the principle and broaden it so that it's applicable everywhere. So, for him, kritena artha, and then he says na kriteneha kaschana, na akritena. Na kritena means that has to be split. Na akritena. So, kritena means action, with action. Na, the akritena means inaction. So, what is he trying to say here? Artha means motive. For him, there is no motive to act, kritena, or not to act. See, this is what is most interesting, because in the previous verse, everyone would have thought, oh, now he's going to stop action. Now he is smashing that misconception, and he says this great yogi, he has no motive to act or to not act, which means he neither has any motive to act, nor does he have a motive to avoid action. Kritena akritena. Iha. Iha means here. So for him there is no motive to act or to not act here. And then he continues, Nachasya sarvabhuteshu. Nacha asya sarvabhuteshu means bhutesh, sarvabhuteshu means all the beings. Kaschidartha vyapashrayah. Kaschit artha means here, artha means object. So whether it is beings or whether it is object, vyapashrayah means dependence. He is not dependent on anything. There are no beings or objects which he is dependent on. Nacha asya sarva bhuteshu kaschidartha vyapashrayah. Beautiful word, vyapashrayah. When we get into the deeper meaning, you will be amazed, because it's an amazing sadhana principle which he is giving. So I am reading the translation again. For him there is no motive to act or to not act here. There are no beings or objects which he is dependent on. So if you just kind of try and get an overview of that, you can see that it is a continuation of the previous verse, that last line where he said there is, that person is beyond actions. There is nothing which ought to be done. Now, when such statements are made, the chances of misunderstanding are very high. Actually, whenever these words like, there is nothing which ought to be done, or sannyasa, renunciation, tyaga, there is giving up, when these kinds of words are used, or even detachment, vairagya, the chances of misunderstanding are very high, because they are talking about that inner state, and a common person's mind equates that with external activities. So the moment we talk of renunciation, people think giving up things externally. The moment we talk of detachment, again people think no interest in the world. So no motive to act means, oh, now he'll stop all activity. You always equate it at the physical level and restrict it there, external level. So this verse, the theme of this verse is that he is making an attempt to break those misconceptions. Why? If you don't understand something, that is far better than misunderstanding it. Because when you don't understand, you always have an opportunity, a chance to understand it at some point of time. But if you misunderstand something, then you feel, I have understood it. There is no way you are going to overcome that ignorance. Most of the things which you are sure about actually are stemming from ignorance, not from an expertise in that field. I know it, many people say, when they actually don't know it. This is why a great thinker said, Half-baked knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge. Supposing it is told to you, you commit a robbery, you will be in trouble. If you don't understand anything, no issue. But if you understand it partially, you commit robbery. Then other part you don't understand. It's a half-baked knowledge. Then it will become very dangerous. Because you will take it as an instruction to go and commit robbery. Half-baked knowledge is what is creating all the problems today. Why are so many wars being fought in the name of God? God means the state of peace, no? Yet people are fighting. Why? Because of half-baked knowledge. That's why in this yogic approach, when you get the full wisdom, all conflicts, everything will vanish. This is the real solution. This higher wisdom is a real solution for all the problems, all the conflicts in the world. Because every conflict is backed by the assertion of ego. And when you dissolve that ego, there is nothing really to fight about, quarrel about. So even when it comes to God, is my God superior or your God superior? My God alone is God, not your God. All these things come from where? From your own ego only. So since misunderstanding is more dangerous, he is spending one entire verse here, verse number 18, to remove those misconceptions. After that, he gets on with the practical advice, because without removing the misunderstanding, if straight away practical advice is given, now what will you practice? You will practice only what you have wrongly understood. Actually, the real wisdom is very easy to give. The problem is you have already conditioned yourself with so many misunderstandings. All these attempts are to clear up first your misunderstandings. Once all your misunderstandings are gone, if you are a perfect clean slate, 100% receptivity, this wisdom can be given just like that. The highest empowerment can be given. So, even before we get into this verse, just by reading it superficially, for him, there is no motive to act. That part seems to be in line with what he said in the previous verse. That is, there is no obligation, no duty, And then suddenly he says, no motive to act or not to act. Means he doesn't avoid action also. So that is where you pause. Listen, 1 second. What is he now trying to say? I was thinking now this person is not going to act, which means he will be not acting. But here he says, no motive not to act. This verse actually is structured in such a way which will force you to think deeply. You cannot just simply pass through this verse. It is a very important verse because before he gets on with your practice, he wants you to remove all the misconceptions which you may be holding on to. And then with full clarity, when you get into your practice at the action level, the chances of spiritual success are very high. So for him, there is no motive to act or to not act here. I'm leaving it there. I'm not explaining it fully here. We will go into the depth of it, but I want you to feel it. Okay, he neither has a motive to act, nor does he have a motive to avoid action. Then what could that state be? Take it up as a homework and simply just reflect. As we go into the verse, anyway, this wisdom is going to be given to you, but you just put that effort. At least you will become unsure about whatever you feel you know. And then there are no beings or objects which he is dependent on. Vyapashraya. Then if he is not dependent on anybody, if he is not dependent on anything, what will he be dependent on? What is that state? This verse itself has been put in a mysterious way to trigger the deeper questions within a sadhak. So if you want to really get into the depth of this verse and eke out the sadhana messages, you need to approach it in an inquisitive way, not with the ego of knowledge. I know what I have read the Upanishads, Some people, they keep saying that. I have read the Bhagavad Gita 20 times. Now, so what? You may read it even 20,000 times. I have read the Bhagavad Gita. See, that I is only coming before the Bhagavad Gita. Then the very purpose of Bhagavad Gita has not yet been reached, no? I have understood the Upanishad. Sir, I have understood the Upanishad better than others. There is a comparison, even in gaining the spiritual wisdom. So, drop off all your ego of knowing and just become neutral. It's a very natural state actually. For a yogi, egolessness is a very natural state. No need to get into false humility. True humility is just being very natural without any ego. And in a fresh way, when we get into this, that is when you can absorb the real messages. If you are constantly going to compare this with something which you already know, you will not be able to grasp the deeper principles. So you practice that this week. Just, find some time, close your eyes and shed yourself of that ego of knowing. It's only a bhav, it's a feeling, So you bring, you suggest to yourself and feel it. Feel as if you have emptied yourself and then read this verse. For him, there is no motive to act or to not act here. There are no beings or objects which he is dependent on. No need to analyze further, nothing. Just practice this emptying yourself and reading this. Whatever little energy which you absorb through this process, believe me, that is far more powerful than all your analysis and all that. I want you to get into that mode first. An egoless mode, temporarily at least. With that spirit, we will use the yogic approach and go very deep with it. So one thing is very clear. He is definitely not going to avoid action. That is very clear. What exactly is that state? All that we will see. So many messages are there. We will go into further depth in the next session. So now we will do the Nididhyasana meditation. Sit in a comfortable position. We will be reinforcing the state of happiness, independence, and freedom. Because the more that is reinforced, the better you will be able to feel this energy of this verse number 18. Because it's such a powerful verse, so deep. It is impossible to explain it in words, and yet he has attempted to do that. So you also need to step up your level and go beyond mere understanding of words and start feeling things from within. You'll have to feel that energy. So this reinforcement of Atma Ratihi, Atma Truptaha, Atmanyeva Santushtaha, that really helps. Okay? So gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. With every breath, I am becoming more and more relaxed. Feel the divine vibrations. With every breath, I am going deeper and deeper within myself. beyond this physical body, beyond these various emotions and thoughts, lies my real self, the infinite supreme reality. I am in that supreme state of happiness, independence, and freedom. I am Swayam Prakashit, self-illuminating. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. Offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Wriggle your fingers, your toes, open and close your palms a few times. Rub your palms together to create a warmth. And cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, your cheeks, forehead, the top of your head, the back of your head, your neck, and slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. So we had a wonderful session today. To understand, feel, and absorb that supreme state is not possible at one go. So remember that principle of challenging your mind, moving step by step. So don't get frustrated. All these great truths are being given to you with an idea of inspiring you. So you cannot become a Buddha overnight. It's not possible. Because some sadhaks, in their over enthusiasm, I find that they are ending up getting frustrated. Oh, I'm trying to be cheerful, still the stress is there. It is through sadhana that you change the energy pattern over a period of time. Okay, so do that homework. Just try it. Sir, how to empty myself, all those things and all, don't ask. Please just give it a try. There's nothing like a perfect way of doing it. And then come back next week. We'll go into the depth of this verse number 18. Okay? So thank you very much. Hari Om.